Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has a total of 96 tracks, including all the DLC. Each one of these tracks are unique, at least mostly, and are super fun to drive on. This made me think, what would happen if you could actually drive on these tracks outside the game and in real life? I want to find out how many of them could actually be drivable by like a real car in like real life. Mario Kart 8 has some stuff in it though that couldn't be recreated by like a normal real life car. Like how a regular car doesn't have a glider attached to it to fly over some huge jumps. I'm also ignoring video gamey things for this, like how these womps and these thwomps aren't real, but just because they're on a track that doesn't mean I couldn't drive on it in real life, you know? For this video, I'm just going to be covering the tracks that are in the booster course pass. I did the base game in my last video, so if you want to see that, you should check it out. Anyway, let's get started with the Golden Dash Cup. The first track here is Paris Promenade, and to be honest, I thought that all the tour tracks would just be possible in this game. Like, in my mind, it's just like driving the streets of a random city. But no, there's a glider section that takes you over some water and a set of stairs, so you couldn't do this one. Next is Toad Circuit, and since it's a circuit track, that usually means it's pretty basic. And this one is super basic. It's literally just like a flat road the whole time. There's a glider ramp that pops up after lap 1, but it's optional, so it doesn't really matter. So, we have our first actually possible track to drive on in real life. Choco Mountain seems actually possible until you get about halfway through a lap and then you see this big jump with a glider. To round out the first cup, we have Coconut Mall. I thought this track would be like stealing one of those display cars that they have randomly in the middle of the mall sometimes, but I don't think that heist would actually work in this mall. Towards the end of this track, you have two branching paths that both lead you to a big jump, and I think the lower one is still just barely too high for a real car to actually do without completely being broken after, so impossible. Next up, we have Lucky Cat Cup, and now you can tell they really started learning out of names for these things. Like, this sounds like the name of a casino that like really sucks. Anyway, to start out the cup, we have Tokyo Blur. And from the first couple laps, I thought this was completely possible. You're just driving through the streets of Tokyo. But of course, on the last turn of the last lap, there's a glider jump that you just have to take. Even though you can drive the first 2 laps just fine, I'm going to have to say this one's impossible because you can't complete 3 laps all the way through. Shroom Ridge is next, and for this whole track, you just drive along some realistic cars on a realistic road. So, boom, we have our next possible track. Sky Garden is the third track here, and I mean, it's literally called Sky Garden. There's obviously going to be some big glider jump through the sky, so nope, no chance. The final race for this cup is Ninja Hideaway, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can't drive on this track. Like, I fall all the time. Like, look at this. Oh, and yeah, you can't drive on this. Like, there's another huge glider section, so another impossible one. Fruit Cup starts out with Amsterdam Drift, and literally on the second turn there's a glider jump. What's with the booster course pass and gliders? They're literally on like every track. Like, what? Riverside Park seemed good until this like 5-story jump through a waterfall right at the end. DK Summit is such a cool ski resort track, but here instead of having a lift that'll take you all the way up to the top, there's a huge cannon that shoots you all the way up. Which is cool, but this thing would blow a real car up into pieces. The last track we have is Yoshi's Island, and wow, I love this track. It's so detailed, like the coins are even Yoshi themed and the music is just incredible. But yeah, after the first couple of turns, you take a big jump into a lake, and I haven't covered this yet, but like a regular real-life car would have no chance of pulling this off. So as much as it pains me to say, this one would be impossible. Next up is Boomerang Cup, and wait, what am I doing? The Yoshi bike is cool and all, but for this video I need to be taking out the GLX. So anyway, the first track here is Bangkok Rush, and I guess it's just a mandatory thing for every tour track to have a massive glider jump, making this one another impossible track. The second track here is DS Mario Circuit, and this one would work. There's this jump that looks impossible when you drive up to it, but you actually just don't jump over anything. This track would be so scary though, with the piranha plants shooting all these fireballs at you though. The next track is Waluigi Stadium, and I know this track would be fine with a dirt bike or something, but how about a car? Well, first of all, for this video, I'm ignoring if you're driving on like ice or sand or something, so the fact that this is on mud isn't a problem. And also a big problem with a lot of jumps I have in this game is that they aren't shaped like this. I don't want to get into specifics, but it'll do a lot less damage to your car if the landing is shaped like this, rather than if it's shaped like this. And all the jumps here are actually shaped right, so I'm going to say this one's possible. But I'm not 100% sure, so you're completely free to disagree with me in the comments. The last track is Singapore Speedway, and you know the rule with these like tour tracks, right? Impossible. New York Minute is the first track of Turnip Cup. And hold on a second, do we have a tour track that doesn't have a mandatory glider section here? I think so. In fact, everything about this track is fine, so we have ourselves another one added to the tally. Mario Circuit 3 from the SNES is the 4th Mario circuit in this game, and it's our second one that's actually drivable. Like, there isn't even any jumps. It's just a flat track in this alligator face shape. Calamari Desert is up next, and while there is this big ramp in the middle of the second lap, you can just drive around it. So I'd say this one's possible. I love how this track shows how safe and smart it is to drive on train tracks. Waluigi Pinball is the last track here, and I really wonder what could possibly make this track impossible. I just really wonder. This cup starts out with Sydney Sprint, and it goes right back to the old tour track rule. And it even makes up for New York Minute by having 3 big launches this time. Snowland is up next, and even though I'm ignoring the slippery road and how questionably thin this ice is here, it's still tough to say because of this jump after the ice section. I think you'd probably damage a normal car doing this type of jump, but not too bad to where the car couldn't drive, so I'm just gonna let this one pass. Mushroom Gorge is next, and even if you could get the mushrooms working like this in real life, the forces on the car from doing this would crush it into like a metal pancake. The last track here is Sky High Sundae, and literally the first thing that happens is to take a huge glider jump, so it's impossible. Opening up Feather Cup is Athens Dash. And while it is a pretty cool track, the first thing you do is take these massive multi-story jumps that would be impossible in real life. Daisy Cruiser takes place on this massive boat, and you can just avoid any of the parts of the track that include water, like the little Goomba pool or that below deck part, so I would say this one's possible. The boat is probably sinking though, let's be honest. Moonview Highway is just, well, a highway, so a regular car would absolutely thrive in this environment, making this one fully possible. To finish this cup, we have Squeaky Clean Sprint, and after one turn you take this huge plunge, and this huge plunge you take into the tub would flood any car's engine, so obviously this one is impossible. The first track of Cherry Cup is Los Angeles Laps, and of course there's a glider section that shows off some parts of the city, so impossible. Sunset Wild has a couple of these small jumps, but if you take them slow they should be fine. There is this shiny stuff that I think is mud maybe? I don't really know. Either way, it's shallow, so I'm just gonna say it's possible. Koopa Cape is a Wii classic that for some reason they changed. They made the tube section at the end really easy and kinda boring rather than the way it was in the original game. But either way, this one's impossible because of the huge jump into the pipe and then the underwater section right after. Vancouver Velocity is a tour track, and you bet it has a glider section, so isn't that great? Rock Cup starts out with London Loop, and there actually isn't some huge glider jump or anything. There's a bunch of small jumps, but nothing really major. I'm a little unsure about the set of stairs though, like the game just treats it like a slope, but in real life it wouldn't work like that at all. But if I'm allowing mud and ice to work, I think I'll allow terrain like this to work too, so we start out with the pass. This Boo Lake course though is like 50% underwater. Like there's no way it would be possible in like a normal car. Rock Mountain from the 3DS is really cool, but totally impossible because of this huge glider jump out of the cave section. And finally, Maple Treeway. It's just like GK Mountain with its huge cannon launch that would just explode a normal car, so another impossible one. In Moon Cup, we first take a drive on Berlin Byways. And this track doesn't have a super big glider jump or anything. It has this set of stairs, but I already said those are fine, so you know what? This one passes. Peach Gardens is the second track here, and for the first 2 laps, there shouldn't be any controversy. It's just a nice drive through the garden. The problem shows up in lap number 3 when you go backwards through the track. There's a couple extra small jumps, but that's not really any problem. The big problem though is this new glider section that shows up. I actually think this would be fine though, because you aren't jumping over anything, so if you just treated it like a normal ramp, it would just be a small jump. So this would pass in real life. Marymount's another difficult one, because there's a steep anti-gravity section, and it's a close call whether or not it's too steep to actually drive on normally. I'm going to say it doesn't pass though, and that's just because of this kind of big jump right into the anti-gravity section combined with how steep it is. 3DS Rainbow Road closes out this cup, and while this one is in space, that's not a problem to me. I'll talk about that later. But there are a bunch of huge glider jumps all over the place, so I'm going to say this one's impossible. Acorn Cup? Why is there an Acorn Cup in this game? Anyway, it starts out with Rome Avanti, and even if this one didn't have a huge glider section, there's this huge jump right at the start of the track, so it wouldn't work in real life. DK Mountain is awesome, and I'm so glad they brought it back, even though they made it so much easier than it used to be. Just like some of the other tracks, they brought back the cannon, which is awesome, but no chance of being real. The third track of Acorn Cup is Daisy Circuit. Just like most of the other circuit tracks in this game, this one is a basic layout and is possible to drive on in real life. And the last track, Piranha Plant Cove, literally starts you underwater, so it's a pretty easy no from me. Spiny Cup is the final cup of the booster course pass, and it starts out with Madrid Drive, and you better believe they did another glider section to show off the city here. Rosalina's Ice World seems completely possible based on the first lap, but the gimmick of this track is that the ice melts as the race goes on. So eventually it makes the jump onto the ice over the water section completely impossible, and you have to go underwater, making this one completely impossible. SNES Bowser's Castle 3 is such a cool remake of an older, more boring track. I do think though that this anti-gravity part is just a bit too steep for a real car to actually drive on, so I'm gonna have to say this one's impossible. The last track of the last cup in Mario Kart 8 is Wii Rainbow Road, and this rendition along with the original are some of my favorite Mario Kart tracks ever. They're both impossible because of this half pipe jump and this like launch star little thing here. Okay, so I said earlier I would explain Rainbow Road, and I actually got a lot of questions about why Rainbow Road doesn't work in my last video, so I'll explain why I think it doesn't work for me. People were saying because it's in space and would have like zero gravity it would be fine, but jumps like this wouldn't work in space because you wouldn't come back down to the road, you just jump up and then just keep going up. But for this video, I'm talking about these tracks like on Earth with like Earth gravity, so either way, it doesn't work for me. Anyway, that's all the booster course tracks in Mario Kart 8 that are drivable in real life. I really hope you enjoyed. There were a total of 15 possible out of the total 48 tracks for the booster pass, and here's the stats broken down cup by cup. If you haven't seen the first part, then spoiler alert, but isn't it like crazy that they both ended up with 15? Like what? Well, not actually. I'm making a revision, and that's that Music Park shouldn't actually be possible. So the first set only has 14 instead. So for everything, 29 out of the total 96 tracks in all of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe would be possible to drive on in like real life. Anyway, my last video got like a lot of views out of nowhere, so thank you to anyone who watched it and liked it enough to subscribe to the channel. That was really cool. Also, your comments were like super nice. Even when you guys disagree with something I said, it was like respectful, which I thought was really cool. So thank you for that. But yeah, if you enjoy the video, like it and maybe suggest some videos you want to see in the future. Subscribe to the channel and yeah. Okay, bye!